وَلَقَدْ أَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ آيَاتٍ بَيِّنَاتٍ.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Brothers and sisters, how you guys doing? So today we're discussing ghusl. Now, what is ghusl in the first place? Before I even discuss how to do it and when do I have to do it, what is ghusl in the first place? Now, linguistically, ghusl means تمام غسل الجسد كله. It is a complete full wash of the body. This is linguistically all that ghusl means. Meaning that if I'm going to perform ghusl, technically all I'm doing is performing a regular shower, a regular bath, with the intention of exiting the state of Janaba, the state of impurity, and entering the state of Tahara, the state of purity. This is all that ghusl is. Now ghusl, once, as I said, the way we enter the state of Janaba is through major impurities, and we're going to discuss exactly what these major impurities are at the end of the video. So wudu, if you guys remember, is purifying ourselves from the minor impurities. Ghusl is purifying ourselves from the major impurities. This is all that ghusl is. Now ghusl, at one time it's mustahab, it's recommended for me and you at times to perform ghusl, and at other times it's wajib, meaning it's an obligation. I have no choice, I have to perform ghusl at those times. And we're going to discuss both of them once again at the end of the video. Now before we discuss how to perform ghusl can be done in two ways. Yes, ghusl can be done in two ways. The first, which is the acceptable way, meaning that if I do it, I fulfill my goal, which is exiting the state of Janaba and entering the state of Tahara, or I can perform it the second way. And the second way is what? The sunnah way, the full, complete way that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to perform his ghusl. And me and you, being people who, one, we have access to water and it's almost universal, and two, we're trying to be as close to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ as possible in terms of following his sunnah. Let's try to focus on the sunnah way to perform it, even though we're going to discuss the acceptable way. Now, number one, the acceptable way of performing ghusl. Now, before I even discuss ghusl, there's a common misconception that people say these are topics that we should not be talking about in public, maybe even for you, Ahmad, to be speaking online, for it to be discussed in gatherings. This should be things that you should research on your own, read about on your own, and implement it on your own. This is completely false, because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, one time he was asked by a woman named Asma. She came to him and asked the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, how do I perform ghusl? And the Prophet ﷺ described to her how to perform ghusl. That's when Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha said, praise be or glory be to the women of the Ansar, for they do not let shyness interfere with them in understanding their religion completely. So this is what me and you have to do. We can't be shy according to certain topics for us to negate and put aside these major concepts in our religion. Rather, we have to put our shyness to the side for once, just for the sake of learning. And this is exactly what we're doing right now. Anyways, the acceptable way of performing ghusl, and the way that we derive this acceptable way, is from the verse of Surah Ma'idah, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you guys enter the state of Janaba, wash yourselves, فَطَهِّرُوا, wash yourself, do this act of ghusl. Now, what is this acceptable way of ghusl? It's very, very simple. The first step is, of course, the intention. The intention that I am performing this bath or this ghusl in order for me to exit the state of Janaba and enter the state of Tahara. This is the intention. This is step number one. Step number two is simply washing every single inch of the body at this point. So I will wash every single place, even the hard to reach places like underneath my foot, under my armpits, inside my mouth, inside my nose. Every single inch of the body has to be wet, including the head, every single place. And this is completing the acceptable way of doing ghusl. So we see how simple it is. It's simply just a shower once again with the intention of becoming pure, of the intention of performing ghusl. That's all that ghusl is in terms of the acceptable way. And this is even how many scholars describe it, especially Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, that if we wanted to go by the acceptable way, the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Ma'idah, this is the way that we would have to do it. Simply just two steps, intention and washing every single part of the body. But this is just the acceptable way. Once again, me and you want to stay as close to the sunnah as possible. So we're going to discuss the sunnah way, the way that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he used to perform ghusl. Now throughout this, me describing this, as you guys already seen, there's going to be a hadith right behind me explaining where do I get this, that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to do this and that and this and that. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, of course, as he started everything with, and as we very famous of the hadith, he would start the sunnah way of performing ghusl with what? The intention, of course. Once again, the same intention. That I am performing ghusl. Maybe you can even make the intention, I'm doing the ghusl the way that the Prophet ﷺ did the ghusl, for me to exit the state of Janaba and enter the state of Tahara. This is how the Prophet ﷺ would start. Step number 2, and step number 2, even though it's not mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ, the most correct thing is for us to still say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We discussed in the last couple videos that when the Prophet ﷺ used to perform wudu, he said that there is no wudu, meaning your wudu is not accepted without saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And what is the wudu? The wudu is just simply purifying ourselves from the minor impurities. So ghusl is purifying ourselves from the major impurities, so it just makes sense for us to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Even though there's no ahadith that the Prophet ﷺ says that there's no ghusl with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, that you should say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in ghusl, there is no narration like that. So it's not correct for us to say, if I forget to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, that my ghusl won't count. Rather, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is only an obligation in wudu. However, we're still going to put number 2 as saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, because that's what majority of the scholars say. Step number 3, as Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha says, the Prophet ﷺ used to wash his hands to begin with, washing his hands 3 times. This is how the Prophet ﷺ would start his wudu. That's step number 3. Step number 4 is that he would put water in his left hand and he would wash his private part and he would clean any dirt or impure fluid or everything from that area. That's step number 4. Step number 5 is that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to perform full wudu. Yes, he used to perform full wudu. So if you don't know what full wudu is and how to perform wudu, go back to the video of wudu, watch that, and continue right here. He used to perform full wudu at this time. However, there is one narrator, and this one narrator is the wife of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ by the name of Maimuna. She narrates that when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to perform ghusl, and when she used to see the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ perform ghusl, he would do full wudu, except he would delay his feet to the very end. So if you want to follow this sunnah, even though it's only mentioned by one person, the only person that mentions that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to delay doing his feet until the end of the ghusl is Maimuna. We will discuss that at the end. However, for majority, and even the way I do it, is I will perform full ghusl at this point, because this is majority of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, the Sahaba that explained that the wudu or the ghusl, they say that the Prophet ﷺ used to perform ghusl, full wudu at this point of the ghusl. That's step number 5. However, if you want to delay the feet until the end, this is also sunnah. We'll discuss what you have to do at the end in order to fulfill the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So step number 5, we said full wudu. Step number 6, after the full wudu, the Prophet ﷺ used to wash his hair 3 times. However, this washing of the hair is different from the washing of the hair in the salah, because 1, this is done 3 times, and 2, that the Prophet ﷺ is narrated to have scrubbed his hair in all directions. Remember, we discussed in wudu, you can go by the direction of your hair. You don't have to get all of your hair. If you're wearing a turban, you can just get the front. This is different. This, you have to get every single inch of your head, all the roots of your hair. It has to become wet, and you have to do it 3 times. Now, for the woman, the Prophet ﷺ was asked by one of the women, how about if my hair is braided, that it's in a certain way that it causes me difficulty to untie and then wash and then retie? The Prophet ﷺ said, just pour water 3 times over your head and it is acceptable. So for the men and for the women who have normal hair, you should scrub the roots of your hair 3 times very deeply. And for those who have braided hair, then you should just wash your hair, pour water on your hair 3 times. That's step number 6. Step number 7, after washing the hair, is washing the what? Washing the entire body after. And then the majority of the narrations say, or in fact maybe even all of the narrations say that after that point, after washing the hair, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to just wash what? The entire body once again. So basically you're doing the acceptable form of ghusl right here, right now, washing every single inch of the body. However, even though it's not mentioned in the narrations, since we have in outside narrations, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha says that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ started everything in his life starting with the right. For example, putting on his shoes, combing his hair, he would always start with the right. And understanding that hadith and implying it here, we wash the right side of our body first, and then the left side of our body. And then after that, we will complete our wudu. This means our ghusl rather is complete after these simple steps. However, for those who follow the sunnah of delaying the feet to the end, you would wash your feet right now. This is where you would complete the wudu, by washing the feet. However, stop for a second, because if you want to completely follow the sunnah in terms of delaying the feet to the end, Maimuna narrates that the Prophet ﷺ wouldn't wash his feet until after he got out of the place he performed ghusl, and then he would wash his feet somewhere else. So if you want to follow that sunnah, you can do it that way. However, if you follow the original way of performing ghusl, you are the wudu in the beginning, in step number 5 I think it was, you are finished after washing the complete body, and then you have completed the ghusl in the sunnah way. So we discussed it, step number 1, which was understanding ghusl in the acceptable way, and ghusl in step number 2, which is the mustahab, the recommended, the way that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to perform ghusl. Now we understand what ghusl is, How to perform ghusl? Now, when and why do I have to perform ghusl at certain moments? The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is narrated to say that that one who is attending the Friday khutbah should perform ghusl. So by me just going to the khutbah, I should perform ghusl. This is one of the sunnah ways. And this is majority of the scholars say that it's sunnah to perform ghusl before going to the Friday khutbah. However, even some scholars say that it is wajib. For example, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he said it is wajib. It's an obligation for you to perform ghusl before the Friday khutbah. If you are sweaty or you have a stink or you are working hardly, you have to perform ghusl because you have an odor, you have a smell that may affect the other musallin. So this is number one. This is the recommended way to perform, or even sometimes it's an obligation for us to perform ghusl when we are going to to go to the Friday khutbah. The second way that me and you have to perform ghusl, once again, is a obligation. So if this happens to me or you, male or female, we have to perform ghusl. This is that if any impure fluids, ejaculatory fluids exits my body, it's called mani in Arabic. If you want to use it in some type of English, it's like the white fluid that exits the private part. If any of it exits my body, no matter how it exited my body, whether it's through in my sleep, through a dream, whether it's through a lustful intimate action, no matter how it exits my body, once this ejaculatory fluid exits my private part, I have to perform ghusl in one of the two ways, the sunnah way or the acceptable way. Step number 3 is that if this happens to you, you have to perform ghusl. It's an obligation, is that if you and your spouse have a sexual intercourse, if this happens, even if step number 2 didn't happen, which was the ejaculatory fluid happening, even if that doesn't happen, just the act of a man entering his wife, both the male and the female have to perform ghusl in either of the two ways, the acceptable way or the sunnah way. Step number 4, and this is only for women, is after a woman's menstruation cycle, she has to perform ghusl. She has no choice. She has to perform ghusl before continuing in her, religious duties. She has to perform ghusl if she has the menstruation cycle. Now, this ghusl that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ recommends for the woman after their menstruation cycle is a little bit different from the acceptable way or the sunnah way to perform ghusl. The only difference, the only addition to that is that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ recommends to the woman after the menstruation cycle that after you perform the ghusl, you would get a piece of cloth or cotton or whatever it is, put perfume or some musk or some nice smell onto it and rub it over the private part so that it can take out any impure smell, any awful smell, and so that it can clean it from any type of bacteria or fungus. And this is even proven scientifically, is that for those who put perfume or the scent or some type of antibacterial soap or perfume on it, that it prevents you from having later diseases that develop in that sort of area. Step number 6, and this is a recommended way, is that the Prophet ﷺ said that anytime me and you are going to meet people, we're going to go to a gathering, for example, Salat al-Eid, Salat al-Tarawih, maybe on the day of Arafah, right, we're standing next to a lot of people, any type of gathering or any type of mixing with the people, we should perform ghusl, because this is a part of Iman, for me to be cleansy and me to be, presented nicely in front of people. When we go to Hajj or Umrah, when we're entering the state of Ihram and we're going to do Tawaf and we're going to do these type of things, this is also a sunnah way of performing, a sunnah way of when we should perform ghusl. Another time where it's mandatory, according to the most accepted opinion, is that when me and you die. Meaning when me and you die, obviously we're not going to be the ones washing ourselves and performing ghusl. However, someone would wash us and make us do the act of ghusl in order that we enter the grave while being tahir, while we being pure. And even the person who is washing the body, he should, not mandatory, he should wash himself after and perform ghusl after washing the dead body, and so on and so forth. Another opportunity or another mandatory time, according to the most accepted opinion, when someone has to perform ghusl is when they accept Islam. Meaning if I was born a non-Muslim, or I was raised as a non-Muslim, when I revert back to Islam, it's recommended or even is mandatory, according to some scholars, that I perform ghusl. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you guys for watching and understanding how we should do ghusl. Once again, I recommend for you guys to perform the sunnah way to do ghusl because this the closest way to following the Prophet Muhammad's path, and since we have water so accessible and so easy to come across of, we should perform this type of ghusl. If you guys have any questions concerning ghusl, you can ask in the comment section below and I'll try my best to answer them. Some questions that just pop up in my mind right away is some people may say, how about if I forget a body part when I'm performing ghusl? We discussed what happens for wudu in the wudu video. However, for the ghusl it's a little different, meaning that if I perform ghusl and I forget, like I look at my arm and I find one part of my arm completely dry, what should I do? The most correct opinion is that we just wash the place that was not wet. So say for example I forgot a place on my hand that I forgot to wash. After half an hour maybe, I remember, oh wait, I didn't wash my hand. So I just go back, wash my hand, and that's it. I'm good. My ghusl is clean. However, if I performed a salah during that time and then after I realize, oh, I didn't wash my hand, I have to redo the salah because I was never in the state of tahara. Okay, so if I forget a body part, just wash the body part that you forgot. However, if you performed any salawat, you have to redo that salah. That's the only thing. Anything else I remember is, yes, you don't have to perform ghusl in a shower. Yes, you can do the traditional way, the way that the Prophet Muhammad used to do it, with a bucket of water and just doing so. Another question is, how about if I am in a desert, if this ever happens, even though once again I said that it's almost impossible to come across a situation in which you have no water at all. But say for example it does happen, you have no water at all in front of you, you don't know what to do, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers this question in the Quran, in which we do something called tayammum, in which we wash our hands and our faces with the intention of performing tayammum, and it will suffice of us performing ghusl and of us performing wudu as well. That's all the questions I can think of off the top of my head. If you guys have any questions, once again, you can either email me, message me, leave a comment below, and inshallah we can find an answer for you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and see you guys in the next video.